And so I've always had this big question mark when I'm braking and heel towing for a downshift. How good of a job am I holding on the pressure? And what I expected to see was a brake pressure trace that maybe brake pressure would go up, ramp, and have this drop in brake pressure, or probably that, maybe it would go the other way, I don't know. And then as I come off the brake, when I was rolling my foot over to hit the throttle, I was actually very delighted last night because I'm better than I thought I was. There. However, I did learn something else about my brake traces, and I think it's done fast since Chris is in here now. Normally, what you would like to do, we talk about driving smooth, and I've always had this, I've been recognized for being smooth. And there are places you can be too smooth. And in my case, my ramp up, this slope of getting on the brake, and this slope of getting off the brake, except for places where I'm really trail braking, were about the same. And so what did I learn yesterday as a result of that? I need to get on the brake more rapidly and get a quicker rise without getting into the ABS and continue to be smooth and slow getting off. So data can be fun.
All right.
Great.
So shall we get started?
Yes.
Oh, there. I was going to throw you the marker.
I think Dan's going to start.
Oh, okay.
So first of all, before we get going, how did the sessions go so far? Anything you want to talk about?
It was greasy and exciting.
Greasy and exciting? Yeah. Point buys are okay?
No. We need some people to be more aware of the cars behind them and what they're like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, I got frustrated and made the mistake of getting on the horn because it's just a signal there's a passing zone coming up. How about this time, you let us by. So that was my bad. I shouldn't do that. But I'm not sure how to indicate.
But it builds frustration in others when we're not looking at our mirrors and checking where they are, and so please be aware of it. We also had an issue in a couple other sessions as well. So just do your best to watch your mirrors and monitor them and go from there. Again, it's a good point by.
And let me add, so we've done this morning. If there's a case of a driver who's got a really high horsepower car that just rockets down the straights and then walks through the corners and isn't pointing you by, don't do like Nick, don't get frustrated. For that session, come through the hot pits, get yourself some clear space. But come tell one of us CDIs. Yeah. I sat down and talked to that driver and said, hey, you gotta let everybody else have fun too. You get your fun on the straights, their fun's in the corners. Let them have it.
Yeah, great point. Pull into the hot pits and count to 30, and you're gonna have clear track. So I do that all the time.
Or you can signal to the person that turn one corner, the tower, mini tower, go like this, saying, I want space, and they'll fly down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're going like this, and then they're going like that. So, yeah, if you don't, yeah.
So you Cervelli?
No, I was doing the hot pit thing to get space.
We were.
So I think I know most of you. I'm Dan Carlson, our lead CDI. Good to see you all out here, and good to see you coming to our classrooms. We started the advanced classroom program last year because we realized all the focus was being placed on our new drivers and not our people that have been around for a while and could benefit from instruction. We all can. So that's why we have these sessions, and today we thought we'd take advantage of just having one of our best drivers, period, in Colorado and even throughout the United States, Chris Cervelli. Chris is a dear friend. He kind of adopted me when we first came to town. He's been a mentor for me. Like Dan Mayer, I suggest if you don't have a mentor, I know you have Dave Biasy, but if you don't have a mentor who's walking you through your car, your setup, your issues, find one. Get one, get a network. Chris has always been there for me, and I can't thank him enough. So he sent me a text yesterday and said he's coming out today, and is there any way I can help? So I suggested, of course, hop in mostly with me. But I said, what else? And he said, oh, maybe I'll do a classroom session or a talk on something. So we picked the topic of the art of braking. Because anyone could smash on the gas, but braking is a whole nother ball game. And so Chris is going to lead us through a discussion on that. It's going to be a give and take. It's not just going to be Chris. It's going to be your CDIs and your instructors, and all of you give your feedback as well as we do that. So, Chris, come on forward. Let's give him a hand. And just so you know, Chris doesn't do this. So, you want a drink?
Special occasion.
So Dan asked me to do a little talk about improving your skills in braking, getting more out of the car under braking. So I'll preface that by saying you've probably been taught to use the technique of braking in a straight line and getting the car under control and then turning in to the apex. And
Turn it up a little, Chris.
Speak up.
and then getting back on the gas as quickly as you can. So what I'm going to tell you about is a little bit at odds with that, and because of that, there's a little bit of increased risk that goes along with it. So you got to be aware of that before you start going down this road. I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of a system to minimize the risk, but you are going to be a little bit closer to the limit on the entry of the corner, which is a difficult thing to do inherently. So you got to manage your risk.
Louder.
Manage your risk. So I'll jump right into it. First of all, how many people here are driving cars that don't have anti-lock? You should have anti-lock.
I don't think it's on.
Okay, that's a problem. Okay, so a minority. Okay, I'll do a quick little aside for the people who don't have anti-locks as I go. This is going to be more geared toward the modern cars that have anti-lock and some technology in the rear suspension especially. So it's all about what you prioritize. You come up to the corner and currently, I'm assuming, you're thinking, all right, I want to go fast this lap. What am I going to do? I'm going to brake later than I did last lap. So what I'm going to tell you is that maybe that's the wrong priority. Instead of braking later, think about instead braking less. So maybe you're going to brake at the same spot or even sooner, but less. And the result of that is going to be that your speed at the apex is higher. Your speed at the apex being higher is going to give you a higher average speed throughout the corner, even to a certain extent if you get on the gas later. You're almost certainly going to have to get on the gas later if you get deeper into this technique. That's okay. So right now what we're focusing on is the process of getting comfortable with this extra entry speed, and in doing so we're probably going to give up a little exit speed. After we're comfortable, we can come back and find the exact compromise that gives you the best lap time. But for the learning tool, you're going to give up a little exit speed at first. Okay. So it's a simple concept, braking less. So it can be difficult to actually execute. You come up to the corner and you think, all right, my braking point is somewhere up ahead here, but for this time, I'm going to brake before that, and I'm going to use half the brake pressure that I normally use. You're going to get through the first half of that brake zone a little bit faster than you've been because you're braking a lot less. And you're going to get through the second half of the brake zone a lot faster than you've been because you brake so much less. And that's going to feel pretty intimidating at first. That speed from, say, the middle of the brake zone to the apex is going to feel pretty intimidating at first. So that needs to be a small bite every time, 1 mile an hour. Or instead of cutting your brake pressure in half, cut it by 10%. See what that feels like. The car is going to feel completely different. You don't have all the weight on the nose now. The car maybe doesn't have quite as much stability, especially if you have a car with anti-lock and you're using the anti-lock. It really wants to go straight when you're using the anti-lock. When you're not using that, now you've got some more steering control. And you're going a little bit faster, so maybe the rear end's a little bit looser than you're used to. So you've got to consider all of that stuff. Everybody following me so far? My general concept here.
So you're not using much, the throttle is kind of irrelevant here?
We're not talking about that yet. We're break point to apex. We haven't thought about getting off gas yet, so yes, it's irrelevant, except for your downshifts. You'd be flipping for downshifts as normal.
Chris, you want to talk a little bit about what are good corners to be trying this in here and where not to?
That's a great point. Not turn 4. I think that's what Doug wanted me to say. And he's correct. Yeah, you need to. You're doing something new. You're probably going to screw it up. So you got to give yourself a second chance there, and that means turn 11, turn 2, good place to do it. You got a lot of room to gather it up, and if you do happen to blow it, you're not going very fast, and most likely it's not going to be terrible. Scott.
So is it correct that I heard that you said not only brake less, but brake a little bit earlier to get you?
Probably earlier. Yeah, at least at first. So,
but yeah, doesn't that give you? At first, it will give you maybe the feeling like you're coasting a little
yes,
bit, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and that's glad you bring that up. So you get the don't coast lesson early on, and this is going to violate this here and there. That's okay. This is a learning tool. This isn't what you're going to do when you're qualifying. It's a learning tool. So you got to get the skill, and then you build it into your repertoire. Getting the skill requires you to do some non-optimal things.
So, unlike Perry Mason, I don't know the answer. How about if you're out on the track and there's no one behind you, it's clear, and you just slow down and not brake, but just slow down and take the turn and focus on a certain speed where you're maximizing and just focusing on the line and hitting that apex and so on. Is that an idea?
So that is a good learning tool. That brings up another good point here. There's a couple corners, turn 3 for instance, depending on how powerful your car is coming off turn 2. It's either an ever so slight touch of the brakes or just a lift. If right now you're braking, you should really try not to brake, even if that means lifting way earlier than you otherwise would. And I'll tell you what the good learning tool is there. In that case, your feet are going to be off both pedals. You're not going to be on the brake, you're not going to be on the gas, and that feels really, really weird. But it's a good skill to have because it is a part of a qualifying lap at times. It's a little bit weird. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. But what that feels like is that you let go of the steering wheel. One of your points of contact to the car is no longer engaged. It's a strange sensation, but one that you need to learn how to deal with.
Say, Chris, when you say brake less, does that mean don't get on it as hard, brake a shorter period of time? Because I've heard some people say, well, if you got ABS in your car, just smash the brake, let the ABS do its job, and then go
So
on.
brake less means less brake pressure. You're not pushing the brake pedal as hard.
Okay.
You're not
So then
slowing
you
down.
wouldn't use the theory of let the ABS do its job.
At times that's appropriate, but for this exercise, no.
Okay.
Yeah. So where was I on Dan's question? Yeah. You're describing coasting.
Right.
Yeah, which isn't normally part of a qualifying run, but again, it's a useful learning tool. So, for instance, turn 11 and 2, they have a really long entry. You can look at. Can we do a turn 11 or turn 2 picture?
Sure. Go down.
Excuse me.
Go down a few. We got some. There. Keep going.
Okay.
There's turn 2 right there.
Okay, perfect. So there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but if you brake less, say your normal braking point is here.
Point to stand on this side so we
stand on
can
this side,
see it.
Normal braking point is here. We'll back that up a little bit to here, but use half the brake pressure. And then maybe, okay, by here I'm going slow enough. I'm just going to release the brakes, but I'm not really ready to get on the gas yet. There might be a coasting period here. That's okay. As you get better at this, your brake point is going to move up, and your brake release point, and this is the really important end game of this, is that you're trying to move your brake release point. I jumped ahead a little bit there, but that's okay. Your brake release point as far around the corner as you can get. You probably are noticing that if you're braking in a straight line here, you turn into the corner and it feels like you have to wait 10 minutes before you get on the gas as the car comes around there. So that waiting period is something you want to shorten as much as you can. So you can shorten it by getting on the gas earlier, which you may or may not be able to do because you run out of track here. Or you can shorten it by braking later and carrying the brakes longer. So I'll try to give you a realistic, optimal brake release point in something like a GT3 911. 911s do this the best. The brake release point would be something like here. And then if it was a powerful 911, it would be coasting or near coasting to here. The less powerful one maybe to here. And then something like a turbo, maybe to here. So again, that don't coast rule doesn't always apply. Don't be afraid to coast a little bit during your your learning here. So the late brake release point. I'd like to hear some questions on that. Make any sense? Is that like vastly different than what you're doing?
Isn't what you're doing is trailing in?
Yeah, this is trail braking.
And so you're trail braking in, so
right.
you're reducing your minimum speed in the
Exactly.
corner to that point you just described.
Your minimum speed is probably going to coincide with your brake release point. Yes.
But you're not necessarily braking to the apex because you're maybe coasting through some of them.
Yeah, you're probably going to release a little before the apex in this particular corner because of the so many degrees around.
So Chris, ultimately the goal is to go faster through the turn. I mean, that's
Yes.
what this is all about.
Higher
Is
average
you want to
speed.
go faster
Speed,
through the turn.
mid-corner speed.
Right. So we call it the minimum speed on the data. What is the lowest speed that you hit in the corner? Yeah. And that is a good but slightly rough indication of how fast you went through the corner. The guy with the highest minimum speed usually has the best section time from here to here. So again, I talked about priorities earlier. Think minimum speed. That will almost never steer you wrong until you overdo it. I just want to make sure everybody gets the distinction between thinking about minimum speed here versus thinking about braking as late as possible here and getting on the gas as early as possible here. It's very different things. It's going to feel very different. And by definition, when you're maximizing your minimum speed, if that makes sense, the car isn't going to have grip left over to brake or accelerate. So there's going to be a bit of a coast period there. The coast period is really short in, say, a 90-degree corner, but in this corner it is, legitimately something like that.
So when you're practicing something new, I would suggest not doing it in traffic. But make sure you have plenty of space before and behind you, and be conservative, as you said. Take baby steps.
So I talked about the anti-lock car versus the non-anti-lock car briefly before. When you're working on anything prior to apex, brake application to apex, the car is automatically in a less stable mode than it is from apex on out. Stable means, what does the car do when you let go of the steering wheel? Or better phrase is, what does the car do when the driver does nothing? When it's stable, it just continues on its path without the driver doing anything. Most of the time, when you're near the limit on the entry phase, it's not going to be stable. It's going to require constant attention by the driver. And the slow in, fast out driving style is an attempt to mitigate that, because the new driver doesn't have that ability to give the car that much attention through the entry phase. So, what does that mean? Be careful. You need to be paying attention when you're doing this. So, all your newer cars, say 993 on, and they just get better as time goes on. All the work that they do to the suspensions to make those cars right ultimately in the stability control, the ABS and all that stuff is with this driving style in mind. So if you find yourself really fighting the stability control, this is why you guys are not in agreement on how this corner should be done. When you're using this style, you'll find that your stability control probably will come on only when you've made an error, or maybe when you've really gotten it right and have the car doing a nice four-wheel slide, depending on what model you have.
So is it better to switch off the nannies?
I'm not really a proponent of that. If you have a sporty model, a GT3 or something like that, Cayman R, GT4, something like that, probably no. I think in that case, they're only going to intervene when you've made a mistake. If they do intervene and you say, all right, I didn't make a mistake, I just really had the car in the limit there and it was a bit unstable and it saved me for that, maybe then it's appropriate to switch them off.
I know it's our code in the club, we try to preach keeping it on. It's there for you.
So the beautiful thing about keeping it on when you're doing this is that you're going to get the stability control. Everybody knows what that feels like.
Yeah,
it hauls the car down really effectively. If it does that, it just told you made a mistake. So it gave you that instead of a spin. So that's probably better.
In my car, there are only 2 places on this track where the stability system will intervene on me after years and years
Where
of pushing this car.
it feels like it slows you down.
And there are 2 places where the car just naturally, you're accelerating out of the corner and you get a little yaw, a little rotation. Exit of 8, exit of 11. And anywhere else, if you're seeing that light blinking at you, pretend it says next to the light, ham fist.
Yeah, I think that's largely true. Unless you're really going fast. Unless you really got yourself dialed in.
The impression I'm getting is, with this, I'm not touching anything.
You're going a little bit slower, so you might be, off the limit a bit. So you might have a bit of grip to spare at first. As you get better at it, then yeah, this section of the corner is going to get looser and looser and looser as you get better at it. So a good indication of that is as you turn into 2, especially as you get here, how much steering do you have? If you have that much steering, you probably didn't loosen the car up at all on the entry. But if you're like this much steering, you probably did. You probably have the rear tires working nice and hard on the entry, which is what you want. The steering angle can really tell you. That figures into how the stability control reacts too. It sees those big steering angles. It says this guy's a ham fist.
Or lady.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is the ABS system is pretty disruptive to a very important moment in the turn, where once you release the ABS, the car's trying to kind of straighten itself out, but at the same time you're turning in, you got a lateral force, and also you're getting ready to have 4F force to exit. So if you eliminate that disruption of the ABS,
So the ABS is complicated, and it never works right for race car driving unless it's a race ABS system. So the scenario you're likely to run into is this: when you have the ABS on, and it isn't necessarily a bad thing. The car really wants to go straight. They design that so it retains a certain amount of steering control. It's always going to give you some, but not a lot. So let's say you're using the ABS into this corner. The car is going to feel like it really doesn't want to turn in. And that's because it's too stable, not unstable. When the ABS is on, the car is stable. It's very likely going to continue almost straight no matter what you do until you release. Now the problem is, at some point you have to come out of the ABS to trail the brake pressure off as you turn in. And that brake pressure that's right out of the ABS tends to be very unstable. So you have a couple transitions you have to fight through there. That is a challenge. So this is easier if you don't use the ABS in terms of like what you're dealing with. But
What's the difference then with the race ABS?
the race ABS,
Like on a cup car?
so it's calibrated in such a way that it assumes that you're not drunk, that you know what you're doing,
Oh, I see.
that you have
So
good
they-
tires on it. and you can deal with some rear end looseness.
Can you program that in, or you have to buy a whole new system?
I'm sure that the Bosch engineers can program it in, but normal people can't.
Usually comes with a V8 engine.
Chris, you talked about you having to deal with the transition.
Right.
You have to, I think you used the phrase, fight with the
Right.
wind. Talk about, what does that mean? What's the driver doing at that point?
So
What are they dealing with?
optimally, you would like to have this smooth release of brake pressure, and that would be accompanied by a smooth steering angle change. It wouldn't necessarily be this way or that way, but it would be smooth. What's likely to happen is that you're going to have a fair amount of steering on when you're trying to get the car to turn on ABS. And then as soon as you come out of the ABS, the car is probably going to suddenly oversteer. And you're going to have to reduce the steering angle to keep it on the same path. And if you anticipate that, you're even better off. That's not simple. I mean, that question's totally realistic because you are dealing with that, but it's a bunch of non-linear things that you all have to deal with. So, question?
Yeah, totally ignorant. So I've been driving my car for 5 years on different tracks, and I've never had the ABS come on. So am I doing something wrong?
You're
or
just
doing
not
something
pushing
right?
hard enough. Just push the brake pedal harder.
Do I want it to come on?
You should experiment so you know what it's like. Because one of these days somebody will spin in front of yours.
Okay, because I know what it's like. Because the first year I had the car, the ABS came on every time I touched the brake. Turned out the previous owner had put the wrong size tires on the back.
Right.
I spent a whole year and a whole bunch of dollars figuring that out. I mean, they went through ABS and everything, so I know what it's like.
So my philosophy on driving a streetcar, a converted streetcar with street ABS, and that's what I've done for the last 3 years now, is to use it, but not to its maximum potential, because you really can't. It isn't consistent enough, and it doesn't work perfectly. So I'll usually touch it, especially a corner like this. I'll usually, the right front wheel go into ABS and then kind of leave it there. And then use it whenever I get into trouble. This is a great aside. If you have an ABS car, whenever you get into trouble, your response should be maximum brake pressure. There's very, very few exceptions to that.
Chris, you want to mention maybe like ice mode too? That way, if some people
Yeah.
have that,
Yeah.
Especially on like the 996 car,
Okay.
that was a big
Yeah,
problem.
I should. Let me finish that point. Like I said before, when you're in ABS, car wants to go straight. So if you find yourself in big trouble and you think you're about to spin or something, you're going to go off, whatever, that quick hit, real hard brake pressure, like as much as you can do for a second or two, is going to take off 15, 20 miles an hour. And then if you release the brake pressure, all of a sudden you're going slower and you can start steering and doing what you got to do. You can't do that without ABS. And that's a big loss in my opinion. That's a huge safety net. But you gotta have that. You gotta have yourself trained. A lot of brake pressure, all you got, instantly. And that's not something you normally practice. Good thing you practice. John mentioned ice mode. Many of the cars, the ABS is calibrated for the tires that they come with, and it works properly. And then people put our compound tires on it. The system gets a little confused, and it thinks you're now decelerating so hard it thinks you are on ice. And because all four wheels are decelerating at a rate that's more than it thinks it ought to be able to do. And what it does, it backs the brake pressure off greatly. You get this hard pedal, the car doesn't slow down. And it's very scary and hard to do. So what's prone to that? 997s?
I'd say
Caymans, probably the worst?
996, all the GT3s through 997.
Cayman will do it.
Yeah.
Caymans will do
The
it. My car was doing it.
Boxers don't seem to do it too bad. The more the car is modified, the more likely that is to happen. The faster you're
Really, the only way I've had it happen, because Chris and I fought it, and we ended up going to a Cup car ABS and then solved all of the issues. Basically, you get a hard pedal, and of course it always happens at the end of the long straight, and the natural reaction is you got to press harder, because you're running out of room.
Right.
But the only way to get out of it is to fully release the brake and then reapply.
But you remodified yours though, didn't you?
No, I'm running a Cup ABS, so it's not. But you know, I had those problems that I had run off a couple of times because of it, and I had to train myself to really. Where it manifests itself is if you do a really fast transition to where you jump on the brake.
That is the key for any car without racing ABS. Your initial brake application needs to be slightly gentle.
Yeah, kind of a squeeze-on application.
If you do a maximum effort instantaneous, it's going to brake less than it can.
Yeah.
It's going to assume.
Or if you're going into a slightly bumpy zone, all those kind of,
yeah.
you know, and the bumpier this track's gotten over the years, the worse that problem has gotten. And again, you generally won't encounter that unless you're really pushing, kind of like Chris is saying, unless you're pushing that car at 9/10 or beyond. You know, at 7/8, you won't get into
It's very disconcerting.
So it's something for people to keep in mind because generally people don't know what it is, will run off.
Yeah.
If you don't know John Selinger, John has that 05 GT3 that flies around the track. And,
They ought to ban him turbo track.
I like to think of it, what's happened to me, I like to think of it as it's like if your pedal went soft. It's not soft, but if it isn't working, pump it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I keep
Yeah, right. Okay, so what did I not cover about this?
Could I, you know, this corner right here where you're sort of naturally kind of waiting to get around the thing, and that all makes perfect sense, you know, to try. What about on the really sharp ones? You talk about any kind of trail break or braking technique, like it's like
Or
6 and 8.
So,
6 or 8.
Yeah, give me turn 8 here.
Does that work for it?
Back.
It's on the back.
Go a
okay.
little more.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll work. Go back one.
Keep going.
6 is such a special case. 8's going to be better.
There we go.
Okay. So, this is a hairpin. There's one feature about hairpins, which is obvious when you look at data all the time. You can't gain much, but you can lose a lot. So, I kind of gave up trying to really maximize this, but here's what you ought to do. You're going to come in on the obvious. What side is this? This is backwards. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Right. Yeah. You're going to trail brake to say here, and your pause area is going to be somewhat less here because you don't have this big wide, you know. Although, yeah, it's fewer degrees than turn 2 to 11, and also you've got this exit is kind of wide here, and this exit road can help you a bit. So the exit doesn't feel so pinched, so you can get on the gas a little bit sooner. To answer your question, it's similar to turn 2, except your pause area, your coast area is less. But the concept is the same. You're going to want to make that brake release point as late as you can make it. This is another good place to try this. If the car feels understeery, like you don't have enough front grip through this section of the corner, you're either going too slow or you don't have enough brake pressure on to loosen up the rear end just a little bit. So again, that much steering angle, you're not working the rear tires hard enough. You're not staying on the brake long enough. That much steering angle, probably got it right. That you probably did too much. So one thing I can't stress enough, you got to do too much a lot before you can get this right. You got to err on the side of too much a lot.
So how would Dave Murray take that turn?
So like on a qualifying lap,
Yeah,
powerful car or not powerful car?
not powerful.
You would brake as late as possible. You would use a lower minimum speed than what's possible, and then you would get the best acceleration run out.
And use your out track on the side
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So in something like a turbo, I wouldn't stress the minimum speed so much. In a Boxster, I totally would. You have this nice payoff here if you got a powerful car.
The initiation of that turn, how would you set your shocks on the initial turn? Sometimes they'll do like this and then,
I'm not sure what you're saying.
well, like
shocks.
someone told me you do a slight turn and then finish the.
Oh,
He's talking about
need the wheel?
So you're
setting
going
the
to be
suspension.
you're going to be still finishing up turn 7 because you're going to be out here as you start the braking for turn 8. So your setup for turn 8 is certainly compromised by your finish of turn 7. And I'm going to prioritize turn 7 over turn 8 any day. Because like I said, there's not a lot.
But you don't preload your shocks, though.
No. No,
So
I try
it
to
should
get,
be all smooth.
I try to get the car straight. You can't get it completely straight if you've tracked out.
Yeah, if you track out that
Yeah.
far out.
You can't get it completely straight. Now, if I'm in an ABS, a non-ABS car where it really matters that the car is straight, I'll make a little more effort to make it straight. But turn 7, that's your lap time right there. You're going to get a lot of lap time if you do turn 7.
Right.
Turn 8, just a little.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't give up anything in 8 if I had to screw up 7.
So, it's our lunch hour. We could talk about this for the longest time. But, so let's depart. But Chris, thank you so much for this. Our CDI committee, we promise we'll do more of this.
Great.
And don't forget, if you're interested, give a Cossack kid a ride during charity rides.